Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
This month we are doing a special episode for spooky season. We read The Black Phone by Joe Hill and a couple short stories from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alan Schwartz and illustrated by Stephen Gamble. For our regular listeners, don't worry, we will still be reading The Discovery of Witches. It'll just be after Lauren returns from maternity leave, which is another thing I wanted to talk about. This is Lauren's last episode for a little while. But don't worry, we'll still be recording. It'll just be Barbara and I doing the reviews in the meantime. But let's go ahead and get into this month's spooky episode. Lauren, if you will please read a brief synopsis of what we're about to talk about.
I will, but I can't do it in that good of a voice.
Yes, you can. I believe you.
First one is The Black Phone from 20th Century Ghosts. The synopsis is as follows. Jack Finney is 13, alone, and in desperate trouble. For 2 years now, someone has been stalking the boys of Galesburg, stealing them away, never to be seen again. And now, Finney finds himself in danger of joining them, locked in a psychopath's basement, a place stained with the blood of half a dozen murdered children. With him in his subterranean cell is an antique phone, long since disconnected, but it rings at night anyway, with calls from the killer's previous victims. And they are dead set on making sure that what happened to them doesn't happen to Finney. The Black Phone is one of 15 stories in Joe Hill's first story collection, originally published as 20th Century Ghosts. And then the second one is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which I feel like if you're anywhere close to our age, you probably grew up on. If you're not, you need to check it out. This spooky addition to Alvin Schwartz's popular books on American folklore is filled with tales of eerie horror and dark revenge that will make you jump with fright. There's a story here for everyone. Skeletons with torn and tangled flesh who roam the earth, a ghost who takes revenge on her murderer, and a haunted house where every night a bloody head falls down the chimney. Stephen Gamble's splendidly creepy drawings perfectly capture the mood of more than 24 scary stories and even scary songs, all just right for reading alone or for telling aloud in the dark, if you dare.
Dun, dun, dun. Fair warning, this episode is going to be a little bit different. So we are going to be jumping right into the main discussion from here. So there is no spoiler-free section. We're talking about 3 short stories. So if you haven't read the Scary Stories to Tell the Dark Stories, take 45 seconds and pause the episode and go read those real quick. They're super short. Like literally one of them is like 2 pages long, and The Black Phone is also pretty short. It's like 30 or 40 pages. So not too crazy, but
If that.
Yeah. So yeah, there will be spoilers. Fair warning. If you're good at that, then stick around. Here we go. So we are going to start off with the Badass Character Award here, which is going to be interesting because we're talking about 3 different stories. But I feel like you can pick a badass character from overarching all of those stories. Which one do you think is the most badass character and the stories that we read?
Oh, I didn't think we would do this because there's really not anyone that's a main character besides Finney. So I guess
Finney's the only name that I can think of.
Yeah, the other, like, the
Child who found Big Toe.
right, like Big Toe man or person who is missing Big Toe. Like, we don't have named protagonists outside of Finney. So I don't know. I guess Finney. What a weird. I thought we would be skipping this personally.
I left it in explicitly because I wanted to see how you guys reacted to it being in there when we're talking about 3 different
Congratulations, Finney.
It is Finney. I mean, I don't know who else you'd pick, unless you're going to pick the Grapper, I guess, Lauren. If you want to choose a serial child abductor and murderer.
No, thank you.
Finney, congratulations, you are the badass character. Which, I mean, you are. He is a badass character in that story. So I think that's fair. Anyway, we are going to be talking about 3 short stories today. So first, we're going to talk about The Black Phone by Joe Hill. And then we're going to talk about 2 different stories from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. First, The Big Toe, and then The Wendigo. So we'll start with The Black Phone. And the first question we have for that is, what kind of fear does The Black Phone tap into most effectively? Claustrophobic fear, psychological horror, or something else?
I'm not sure. Maybe. I feel like if I hadn't seen the movie that is based on the book, I might have had a different fear because I would have not known what would happen. But I feel like watching the movie, that's why I always try to read the book before watching a movie, because I feel like it ruins the book for me if I don't. So I'm trying to think of what I would say if I hadn't. Maybe claustrophobic, but then again, I'm basing it off of like how I know how small the room was in the movie, which I mean the room wasn't that small, but it's the fact that you can't get out of it. I think that gives me that feeling. So maybe a little bit of the claustrophobic versus psychological. I think the room in the book seemed a lot smaller, at least to me it did. But I guess those two. I don't know.
I know you're going to be shocked since I'm the one who writes the questions that my answers are the two examples that are in the question. But claustrophobic fear, I think. So the movie definitely did not make me feel as claustrophobic as the book did. Joe Hill did a very good job making the reader feel as cooped up and stuck as Finney was, and I thought that was really effectively done. And then obviously there is psychological horror too that he's dealing with. Is he's got the grabber who's trying to play his games and getting frustrated that Finney won't play along, and adding to kind of some of the psychological tension.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I think the claustrophobic fear, I didn't really picture, and I didn't realize that there was a movie. So, claustrophobic fear, probably just in the not able to escape factor, because I didn't know any size of the room references. But then also, yeah, just the psychological horror of like seeing the remnants of what had been done there in the past, and like the whole concept of knowing that that's going to be your fate. Pretty terrifying.
Especially for a little kid, a relatively little kid. How old is he in the book?
He's
Like
13.
12 or something. 12 or
No,
13.
13. He had just turned 13.
Man.
13.
Moving on to the next question. How does Joe Hill make the villain memorable without giving us much of his backstory? Do you think this mystery makes him scarier or less so? So I'm kind of torn on this one because I like to have a backstory for a villain, but I think in a horror story, especially a horror short story, this was more effective and scarier by not knowing much because you really, I mean, we have about as much information as Finney does, which makes it scarier because you kind of feel as if you're in the situation with him, trying to figure out what's going on and what you can do to get out of it. And so I think in that case, the mystery does make him scarier. In the movie, you learn a little more about him, and I think in some ways that makes him a little less scary because it's a human as opposed to just this creepy monster man that's taken you and is going to do God knows what with you. So I think that not knowing as much in the case of a short story like this actually makes it scarier.
I don't know what you mean that the movie isn't this scary. The link that you just sent when I clicked it.
Well, the movie is still scary. I'm not saying it's not.
I'll have to watch it, but he looks a little sus. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of assuming that you have to do as the reader, especially if you haven't seen the movie or read it before. Like I don't know, I just kind of filled in the blanks. And having just clicked this link that Michael sent for the movie, like that is not at all how I picture the villain, which is funny. I don't know why.
Well, that's because he's very different.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, I think that not giving as much of his backstory makes it scarier in the sense that you're then, if you have like the brain / like Michael, for example, who loves to read Stephen King and like all the creepy things, then you're probably filling it in with more scary things than if they would just give you the information. And I feel like growing up with our mom, who also really liked creepy things, I feel like I tend to probably be the person that fills it in with scarier stuff than otherwise would have to. So,
and I will throw out real quick before Barbara answers, just for our listeners and just in case Lauren doesn't know, Joe Hill, who wrote this story, is Stephen King's son.
I did not know that, but that tracks.
Yep. How does he make him memorable? I guess I would have to say the same thing with Michael as far as like just not knowing much about him. Like you don't know why he's abducting and killing these kids. You just get the fact that he's doing it, and he's been doing it for 2 years, and he kind of stopped and everyone thought like he either moved away or got killed or someone found or something like that, and then obviously come to find out he didn't. I would say as far as like appearance wise, I actually thought the movie did a better job. Like he was a lot creepier, especially with the whole mask thing, because like in the book he doesn't wear a mask. So I think appearance wise, I think the movie was cooler, but you don't really know why he's doing stuff in the books. I think it's more of just the fact of the unknown is what makes it interesting.
All right, next question. The phone and the voices of the other victims, do you see them as purely supernatural or symbolic of something else, like trauma, guilt, or resilience?
I think just because I only read it and didn't watch anything or have any background, I interpreted them as purely supernatural and creepy. I mean, creepy but helpful, but also just, I mean, I totally just interpreted it as like these are the ghosts or spirits or whatever of the previous victims, kind of thing. I wasn't thinking about it that deeply.
So, did in the book there was only one person that he actually talks to, right? Like the phone rings multiple times, but only one kid answers back.
I thought
I
that
don't.
there was two, but I could be wrong.
I think there were two kids that answered. It was
Yeah,
not
and then
just
one
one
of them,
kid.
one time it was like just noises or something or breathing or,
Right.
but
That's what
I
I'm
thought that
saying.
there was two different
He actually talked to?
conversations, but I think so, but I did the audiobook, so I could be wrong.
Okay, then I don't know because I don't remember reading two voices. I remember like the phone rings, he tries talking it, he just hears like static noise or like breathing or something, but it then doesn't talk to it. And then the last one is the kid that he actually knew, the other pitcher kid. Something Yamada. I don't know. It starts with a B, like Brian or Bruce or something.
Barry, it's either Brian or Barry.
No, it's not
I don't know.
Barry.
I have
I
a
think it's
terrible
Bruce.
memory. I
I don't
remember
know.
two, but I very well could be wrong.
Interesting. I don't remember two.
Yeah,
Maybe I
think
had
there
a
were two, but
second creepy kid just come through my headphones. Dun, dun, dun.
I'm gonna have to look through it because I don't know. I feel like there was something weird with the copy that I got. I had some weird errors. Anyways, I think it's maybe it's both. Like, I think as a reader, you interpret it as both. Like, a supernatural because like he's hearing the victims that he like previously, and then maybe symbolic in the sense of like that little voice in your head that tells you to keep going. Is how I would interpret that. But I don't know. I think I mostly saw it more as supernatural, especially because of how it ends. It's like the phone is still ringing even though he like disconnected it and then he goes, "It's for you." Like that's such a bomb. like ending. But yeah.
So yeah, that was a pretty badass move at the end to hand the phone to his corpse and say it's for you. I also think they were supernatural. I like the idea of that the other kids that he's murdered, spirits, are still in the house and they're trying to help Finney get out of the predicament that he's found himself in, using information that maybe they've gleaned from their own experiences. So yeah, supernatural is what I think for that too. Let's see. The next question. Joe Hill often blends horror with moments of hope or empowerment. Do you think The Black Phone ends on a hopeful note? Why or why not?
Oh, I guess I kind of spoiled that. Yeah, heck yeah. I think it's such a cool ending to just be like, this is like, this calls for you and it's all your dead victims. And like, even the kid saying like, oh, we've called just to mess with him type thing. And obviously it does mess with him because he even goes like, oh, do you hear the hearing? Like the ringing. And when he says that, and it was actually his phone like upstairs, like you could see that the grapper was kind of like skittish about that. So clearly like them messing with him via the phone was working. So I think that was really interesting. As far as like hopeful, I empowerment, yeah, like thought what a badass move. Like the dead victims, the people the kids that you've killed, yeah, they want to talk to you. Here you go.
So yeah, I agree. I think that I do think it ends on a hopeful note, obviously, since Finney succeeds in killing Albert, I guess is his name in this one, and presumably going to escape and be okay, or as okay as you can be after an experience like that. So in a way, that is hopeful. I also think that Joe Hill did a good job of interweaving hope and then taking it away throughout the story, which added to Finney's distress and the reader's distress also. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that one. I thought the ending was very much like empowerment, like the kind of taking that power back for himself, but then also for the previous victims. And then I don't know if hopeful. I guess like Michael said, that would be one word for the ending, just because obviously he didn't die, so there's hope in that. But it still sucks that all of his former victims are like stuck there, like spirit wise. Maybe this will release something so that they can move on.
I was gonna say maybe the death of Al releases their soul from that location.
One can only hope. All right, last question about the black phone. And sorry, Lauren, you're not going to be able to participate as much in this one. But if you've seen the movie, what major differences stood out to you between the short story and the film? Which version do you think captured the tone of the story better? So the biggest difference, well, so I guess before I get into my answer, I'm going to vindicate Barbara because I just double checked and tell you that the phone, he only talks to one kid in the story.
I
So,
told
so
you.
that's one difference. In the movie, he talks
Yes.
to like all of the
All
kids
of them. Yeah.
who have been kidnapped and murdered by this man. They all like sequentially call him and give him different advice on things he can do to try to get out of this situation. So that was one difference. The biggest difference that I noticed right from the get is the killer is dramatically different in the sense that this is described as a fat guy who is dressing as a clown and kidnapping kids. In the movie, it's Ethan Hawke, who is absolutely not a fat guy, and is still, I guess, a clown slash magician. I think, right, Barbara, or is he
He said
just a magician?
he just said magician, not a
So
clown.
he's a kid's magician instead.
Yeah, there was definitely no mask in this one either.
And that, yeah, the mask of the movie was definitely a very creepy element of it. So those are some of the differences. There are obviously more. The movie is a lot longer than this short story would be. So there's a lot of content added to it, even though at its core it's still the same story. I think that as far as which version captured the tone of the story better, that's a really hard question to answer. They're different, and I think that the changes that they made for the movie make the movie really great. But I think that the story is really good by itself too. The horror is different in the story than it is in the movie, and because like we were talking about earlier, that it does a good job at putting you in Finney's shoes in the story and feeling that claustrophobic feeling he's feeling and that like fight or flight, I've got to get out of here. And the movie has different elements of horror. It's definitely more psychological, I feel like, so that they tell, even though they tell the same core story, that they are different enough to say that I think they both capture the tone that they're going for.
Yeah, I played the fifth on this one because I haven't seen the movie, but just looking at the link that Michael sent, the like I said already, the villain looks much different than is described in the book. So that's all I got.
I mean, there's a lot of differences between them. I feel like obviously the story is a short story, so it's not very long, and so the movie takes it and expands on it. So like you get a little bit more story or background on Finney and his family and the family dynamic and his sister. You get more story about the kids that the grapper had already murdered. Like you get kind of little snippets of their life when they're talking to Finney. You actually get them talking to Finney, and all of them do. Like that's, I think, one of the biggest differences. That is, he actually talks to all of them, and they try to help him throughout the whole thing of like what they did. So it's like one of them is like, oh, I dug a hole, so if you keep digging, you'll make it, or like, oh, I use this to try to escape through the window. If you do it, you'll be able to do it, or like. Don't go upstairs because he's gonna do this to you, type thing. And so it just expands on that, I think. And obviously the killer, like his appearance and like the games that he likes to play kind of gives you more of a background on him, more of like into his psyche of like why he's doing this, whereas the book you just don't. For which version captures the tone of the story better, I'm gonna have to do what Michael said too. Like they're both different, and I don't like you can't compare one with the other because at the end of the day, like yes, it's based on it, but it's a different medium, and you can't compare movies to books, books to movies. So I think for what they were, they both did a good job of capturing the tone of what they were going for. Like the movie did a good job of that, and the book did a good job of just being kind of a creepy book. And like, okay, so I would say both. I don't know. Yeah.
I think that's a good answer, similar to mine. So I obviously agree. So that's all for the black phone. We're going to move on to our next story, which is The Big Toe from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. The Big Toe is simple and short. Why do you think it is such a memorable story despite that?
I think it's memorable for me for different reasons than it could be for others. Mainly because this particular book, The Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, Michael was obsessed with growing up, and my mom, and they frequently bonded over scary shit, and I did not like being scared as a child. And so this was one that my mom would read, and then if you're familiar with this book, at like in the stories it says like what to do to your friends that you're reading it to or whatever. So it'll be like in parentheses at this part, like pause and then loudly jump and say this, like, or grab the person or whatever. Well, my mom was always just really good at jump scaring anyway. And so this particular story at the end, I can't remember what exactly. Is it like you have it? Is that what they say? Or something with the toe at the end?
Oh,
Oh
like
yeah,
the thing at the, I think
Like
it's
the
something
thing at
like
the
that.
very end. I think it's
like
like you've got it or you
yeah,
have it.
you've got it or
Oh
something.
my gosh.
Yeah.
And she would like grab me or like say it super loud. And so like this one was always memorable to me just because of childhood trauma. I would have nightmares about like the toe. And then the other one, and I know we're not talking about it, but it's just worth an honorable mention. And Michael's gonna know. I don't know if you've read it, all of them, but the one with the lady and the ribbon around her neck.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one that's my favorite. That's
I
my
used to
favorite
have,
story.
That's a
I
good
used
one.
But
to have
is that
nightmares.
from this though?
Yes,
Is
It's
it?
in one
Okay.
of these books.
it's
Yeah.
in one of
Okay.
them. I don't know
I mean,
which one.
Okay.
so all of these stories they're not necessarily original stories. Like there are a lot of them
I
are
see.
folk tales that he's retelling.
I see.
So that one was in. It was in one of them. I don't know which.
Yeah,
one.
that one's my favorite one where her
The
head
big
lops
toe
off. Yeah.
and the head one. Those were the two that I always had nightmares about. So
hmm
it's memorable for me mainly just because of that.
Right. Let's see. Memorable. I think it's like it's just as a kid, like I feel like it's rare to get creepy stories that were aimed at children where it kind of toes the line where it's like not creepy enough where you're gonna like traumatize the children,
Does it
but like
toe the line, Barbara?
yes, as it toes the line, as one would
Amazing,
say.
amazing.
But it's like still good enough to like kind of make it memorable or like creepy as a kid. So I mean, I remember I never owned the books as a child. My teacher did, and so she would read a couple of stories, and like all I just remember being a kid and just like all of us just waiting for her to read them and stuff like that. And she always just did a very good job of making it creepy. So that's what I remember. I didn't realize until literally reading this that there were prompts in the actual book to do like a spooky thing. I thought that was all her. And so come to find out that is not the case. I feel cheated. No, I'm just kidding. But so that was new to me because I was like, what? I didn't realize this was in the actual story. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the big toe, as well as a lot of the other stories in these books, are memorable because of the environment we remember hearing them in. Whether it's Barbara talking about her teacher reading them to them and scaring them, or like Lauren was saying, when our mom would read them to us when we were kids, and she would not just do the prompt in the book; she would also have some impromptu things that she would do, and Lauren did always get very scared, which was funny. For me, probably not for Lauren.
Yeah,
But
you always thought it was hilarious when I was terrified.
it was so easy to scare you. Probably still is easy to scare you. But yeah, I think that's why these stories are memorable. They're easy to digest, but they're still spooky in a fun way that's not deeply disturbing like some other horror media you might consume today. So next question is actually going to talk about what you guys were just discussing, those prompts. So many of the scary stories to tell in the dark tales are meant to be performed aloud, often ending with a scream or shout, or in the case of the big toe, the alternate ending says to pounce on your friend to scare them. How does that oral tradition change your experience compared to reading the story silently?
I do think these stories are meant to be read out loud because, I mean, I'm also an adult, so it's not scary at all. But I can see why this
She's
was
lying.
meant.
I heard her scream when she was reading the story.
Okay.
It really
Yeah.
scared her.
So I can see why it is meant to be orally performed or whatever, because it really like you could do like the pauses and you can do like creepy voices and stuff, and I think that really adds for the kids to enjoy that. Reading it, obviously I was just like, oh, okay, and then it has like, oh, and here is where you like touch your friend and go boo wugga wugga or whatever, or like, oh, and there's an alternate ending, so like depending on what you're feeling that day, the person who's reading it could do a different ending or something like that. So I think it's better performed out loud than reading it silently, and I think your kids would probably prefer it that way too.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. A lot of these stories, especially in the first section of this book, are definitely designed to be read aloud, and I think would be a lot more fun for all the reasons that Barbara listed. It just doesn't hit the same, even as an adult, reading it off the page in your head as opposed to hearing it spoken aloud.
I concur. I think it definitely isn't the same reading it because your brain, I don't know, my brain anyway, maybe it's just me, like I read faster than like I even process, and so like I don't know, it kind of ruins it for for you at the end. Like, oh, pause here, pounce on your friend, say this loudly. And now, if I was just reading it and there weren't any of those things, then maybe, I don't know, might be a little bit different. But they're definitely better told aloud. Although I feel safer reading it because I can control my destiny.
It's your turn to traumatize your children.
There you go.
Okay. Yes.
You're not going to get jump scared.
Well, because look, like what Michael said, Mom never stuck to like the same every time. So like every time she would read it, she would like scare you at a different point. So you're literally just like waiting for it to happen, and you know it's going to happen at some point.
Well, she would change the stories too. So really,
Yes.
the story in the book was just like maybe the first time we heard it, that's what we got. Every other time it was a different.
There was
story.
a lot of embellishing happening.
Yes, there was. Let's see. Next question: is the Big Toe truly scary, or more of a gross and funny horror story? What makes it work as an introduction to horror for young readers? So no, I don't think the Big Toe is truly scary. But I also, as I say that, I'm thinking that it's easy to say that reading a 2-page story, but I'm fairly confident if I was a child who had just eaten 1/3 of a human big toe that my mom cooked in soup, and then I was laying in my bed one night and someone was walking through my house saying, "Where is my toe?" I'm fairly confident I'd be terrified. So maybe it is truly scary and it just doesn't feel that way because I'm an adult reading a story written for children. But it's entertaining, it's fun. I think all of these stories work as a great introduction to horror for kids because, like, I can't remember, I think it was Barbara said earlier that there's not a lot of, or is it Lauren maybe? That said there's not a lot of horror out there directed for young kids. This is kind of the exception, or Goosebumps was too, I guess, when we were kids.
Yeah, oh gosh, I loved Goosebumps.
And I loved Goosebumps. You could choose your own adventure.
Oh, I would cheat.
Of course you would. It's like how you play video games. You're effectively save scumming a book, doing choose your own adventure, and then going back and choosing a different choice. But anyway, I think that the fact that they are still spooky, but not something that's so traumatizing that they can't enjoy it. A lot of the stories remind me of what I would call like a campfire story, where you're telling a spooky story with a flashlight held underneath your chin, trying to creep out your friends around the fire. And I think that that's a fun entry into the genre for kids.
I would agree. I don't think it's, I mean, like Michael said, if somebody was actually in my house at night, like saying that, I would be terrified. But I'd be terrified if somebody's in my house at night saying anything. I mean, but I think reading it as an adult is much less scary, other than like, the inherent trauma that comes up for me about it. I think that it would be, I'm just trying to think like what qualifies as a young reader, because I feel like I won't be able to read these to my kids until they're like a lot older.
I think I was, first or second grade, I think, when my teacher...
Oh my gosh, that's like not that much older than Eliana. My kids are just wimps, maybe.
So it actually says on the book here, it's meant for ages 8 to 12.
Okay. 8 to 12, I could see that. I was probably slightly younger than 8 because Michael was probably 8 when we started reading these. So maybe that's why.
So is that right? Is it first and second grade? I don't know how old you are.
8 would be like an older second grader.
Okay.
Third grade.
Okay. Obviously, I feel like it's kind of hard to judge these books because you're an adult. But the one thing I will say is, and I'm pretty sure even as a kid, I thought the same thing, was why are you eating someone's toe in the first place? Like, of all the body parts you're gonna eat, like the last thing I want to be putting in my mouth is a toe. Like, that's gross. So, and even reread, I don't remember this story. But I just remember like reading it now, just like, ew, like why are you... And then the parents are like, oh yeah, we'll just cook it. And it's like, what? I thought the parent was gonna be like, oh no, like get rid of the toe. And they're like, nah, son, good job. We'll just eat the toe.
Yeah, I like how we just gloss over that. Like,
So I was thinking about that while I was reading it, and my first thought is like, oh, maybe this takes place, during like the Great Depression or some other time, and this family's down. Hold on, and then, so this family is like down on their luck. But then I was like, no, because when they're describing the ghost walking through the house, the ghost walks through like 6 rooms in this massive home that this family has. So there's really not an explanation.
And even if I was down on my luck, I'm not eating toes.
Right. Like, first off, ew, nail. Like, it's just the whole concept of it is gross to me. So, like, is it more of a gross funny, yeah. I mean, the horror to me is the fact that you're eating a toe, not the fact that someone's trying to find the toe, because, valid. I would too. Be like, why you be eating my toe? Like, so I think that's the part that's the horror. But yeah,
Yep.
I think, and I'm pretty sure as a child I also thought that, because I was like, why you be eating toes?
It's funny though, you saying what you just said unlocked a memory from childhood of when mom would read this and she'd get to the end where it's the guy, the thing is like, where is my toe? And then she'd reach out and like grab your stomach and say, it's right here, because you ate it. And that was always really, yeah. Anywho, last question about the big toe. Did this story or others in the collection freak you out as a kid, and how did it hit differently reading it as an adult?
Yes, I feel like I've already answered this one though. The whole book was all traumatizing for me. And I think it didn't become like entertaining until I was probably too old to like even be reading it, because I think like she was just so good at telling it, but then also Michael would traumatize me with it after the fact and like scare me in other settings just because he thought it was funny to do so. And so my horror was just built upon by by that nightmare fuel. So yes, lots of these stories. I don't think there were very many stories in these collections that I didn't get scared by, or that didn't freak me out. And it obviously hits different reading it as an adult. But for me, it takes me right back to like Michael trying to scare me in the dark car or his room or wherever.
I don't remember if I remember really liking these, like really, really enjoying them. But I know I enjoyed like different story, because it's a huge, like, there's 3 books and they have quite a bit of like stories in them. Like, I don't even know, like 15, because they're very short, and some of them are like little poems, I think, or songs. I can't remember if it's a poem or song.
Some of them are literally songs, and there's actual like sheet music in there, so you could technically like play it to go with it.
Right. So like I remember that, and I have a distinct memory of like the ones that I really enjoyed, and like we could always like try to vote and stuff like that in class. I remember not liking all of them though, but yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed reading. I mean, I loved Goosebumps and stuff like that as a kid, and I love reading. I always have. So even when our teacher was reading these stories, like I thoroughly enjoyed them, and I feel like I said, it was like a novelty as a kid that you didn't really get too much of like this creepy stuff. And even Goosebumps was for when you're older. So you should maybe read Goosebumps to like your 4-year-old child. But yeah, I just remember liking them.
Probably graduated from this to Goosebumps, right? Like this would have been.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I think Goosebumps is a lot scarier than these were.
So I don't have a whole lot more to add on top of what you guys have said. But yes, the stories did scare me as a kid. And the big thing I get out of them is reading them as an adult. And since these were so short, I did read, 5 or 6 of these stories in addition to the ones we were supposed to read. And at this point, they're still spooky, they're still fun, but a lot of it's just the nostalgia and the memories that come with reading these stories and remembering, sitting there in the dark. Lauren and I sitting there like on bated breath as our mom would read these scary stories to us and try to scare us. And that's what's fun. The nostalgia and the memories as an adult. Moving on to our last short story we read was The Wendigo. And the first question about that is, how does Schwartz build dread in The Wendigo? Is it the isolation, the cold, or the idea of something ancient creepily watching from the woods?
You know what? I want to say this one's probably one of my least favorite ones. I'm not a fan of this one. I don't really know what the hell's happening in this one. This dude is trying to explore like a cold location. The person that's helping him like runs away, and then that's that. And it's like, okay. And then at the end, it's like, oh, he's not even there. So I don't know. Maybe as a child this would have hit differently, But I guess the creepy part of it is thinking that you saw your friend and that actually wasn't him in the trench coat. I don't know.
So, I mean, I like this one, and I picked it because I like the Wendigo folklore that comes along with it, and this is an interesting take on the folklore. I think the dread in this for me is not necessarily that something's watching, but the isolation and the fact that your guide that you've hired just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, loses it and full sprints away from your camp at night. in an area you're unfamiliar with, and now you have to figure out how to get back and survive. That, even as an adult, is a scary thought. So the Wendigo stuff here, obviously, since this is a story written for children, doesn't touch on, the cannibalism and a lot of the other stuff that comes with the Wendigo folklore. It kind of hints at that the guide is possibly a Wendigo, and that's why he ran off to keep himself from hurting the guy that hired him. Is one take on it. But yeah, it's creepy in that sense that this guy's gotten abandoned in the woods a long way from civilization and is now alone.
Yeah, I don't think I'm super familiar with the traditional elements of the Wendigo, so without having that background. But I would agree with Michael, that makes sense. I think the dread for me, this one wasn't as scary, and I don't even honestly remember this one as a kid, so maybe this wasn't one of the faves that got read. But probably, like Michael said, yeah, just the abandonment factor of, like, if you're in an unmapped area of Canada, and then all of a sudden the person that you've hired to help you is gone, and then the footprints just disappearing, and like kind of trying to figure that whole thing out would be scary.
All right, next question. The Wendigo myth has indigenous roots. How does the story adapt or change those traditional elements? Do you think it honors or oversimplifies them? Yes, knowing a lot about the folklore, it obviously has a lot of indigenous roots. I think that the story tells as much as it can without getting into what would be inappropriate for the age group this story is written for. So some of the folklore is like the Wendigo is it's a malevolent spirit that can possess a human, and so I think we see that possibly here, that maybe the Wendigo possessed this Native American that was with him and caused him to run off. Obviously, this isn't going to touch on the cannibalism. This isn't going to touch on a lot of the other violence that's associated with the Wendigo or some of the other things. So I don't want to say, I think that for the target audience this story was written for, I think that it still honors the folklore. I don't think it's fair to say that it oversimplifies him. From a literal standpoint, it does. It's oversimplifying it, but you're also talking about a story that's written for 8-year-olds. So you kind of have to do that a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know enough about the folklore and the myths for this one to really answer it properly. So I will let Barbara answer.
I mean, I don't really know if I like the only like Wendigo myth or whatever that I know is just like it's cold. Like it's in a cold environment that you see them, and they're kind of like monstrous, like lupine looking type creatures. And I don't know anything else about them. Like, I don't know if they like feed on your blood versus your meat, or like they eat people. Like, I truly, I'm not sure. The only stuff I know is like cold weather and like lupine type thing. Like everything else, I'm not like, does silver work on them, or is that like more like lycanthropy? Like, I really don't know. So I have no idea if this oversimplifies them. Like this one mentioned them like flying, and I guess I'd never realized they could fly. So I guess that's new for me. So I don't really know how it honors this because I'm not very familiar with the original mythos of these creatures outside of like 2 things.
Totally fair. I can go over some of the mythological aspects of it after the podcast if you're curious. Next question. Do you think the story is more about physical danger or mental breakdown? And how does that ambiguity make it scarier?
I feel like, I don't know, I felt like it was more physical danger when I was reading it. I think, how would it be about mental breakdown? Did I just like miss something?
Well, I would say it's physical danger for the dude who hired the Native American to help him, and then more of the mental breakdown for the Native American, because he literally like was hearing things and hearing his name, and all of a sudden just like booked it out of the tent and was like something about the heat in my feet. So that's how I would answer that. Would be like, I see as both depending on the character. Like when one was literally scared of physical danger of like what's out there, and the other dude literally had a mental breakdown.
That's fair. Okay. I took it as like mostly interpreting it as physical danger for both of them, just because like he's like burning feet and the whole thing. So yeah, my interpretation was mostly physical danger, and then obviously like the mental aspect of that, because like you're hearing voices, both of them, and like just the creepiness of, especially at the end with like was it like they were on the campfire and then like he lifts the hat and then it's like that'd be a mind F. to
Just dust.
to do that. So yeah.
I already answered it with earlier, so that's how I interpreted it.
I mean, I think that's a good interpretation. I think that I don't have a whole lot to add on top of that, to be honest. There's both aspects of this, and the combination, I think, or the ambiguity of it does make it scarier in the sense that you're experiencing all of it. But yeah, I think that you really well summed that one up, Barbara. Thank you. Okay, so our last two questions are going to be questions that involve all of these stories combined. We'll get into the first one here. So the Black Phone and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark both involve children or young characters. What is the power of telling horror through a child's eyes?
Well, the Wendigo doesn't involve children. They're two grown-ass adults.
The Wendigo is the only story that doesn't involve children.
Well, I'm just saying 2 out of 3. I think the power of telling horror through a child's eye. I mean, obviously, children see things differently. Like, I feel like as adults, we don't give them enough credit. They, I think, are way more observant than most adults, and they notice things. And why? I don't know. I feel like the horror, like things that children are scared of, are different than what adults are scared of. And depending on that, I think they might be. I don't know. I don't know. Like, are they better, like, level-headed to, like, get away with stuff? Who knows? I mean, as a kid, like, you hear a scary noise or something like that. Like, you cover your whole body up, and it's like, if they can't see me, they can't hurt me type thing. And, like, that's the mentality the Big Toe Kid had, where he was like, well, surely he doesn't. If I hide here, he's not gonna know that I ate his toe. Like, he's like, if I just don't say anything, he's not gonna find me. So I don't know. It's just it's funny and interesting, and I always find it so. I mean, it's cool to see how children interpret things differently, because they do. So it's, yeah. I don't know how else to answer that.
No, that's a good answer. So I think that there's a lot of power in telling horror through a child's eyes, and it's for a combination of reasons. There's the innocence of kids versus the opposite involved in most horror. Their perspective is often very unique also. And so seeing, like in the Black Phone, thoughts and plans that Finney is making are things that maybe an adult wouldn't think of. An adult probably wouldn't pick up a toe that they found half buried in the ground, and bring it home to eat, except for Albert from the Black Phone. Maybe he would. Maybe he's into that. Who knows? I think that there's a lot of power there in telling the story that way. And, there's other stories in the Scary Stories book, too, where you see, because of kids' innocence and naivete, like maybe, the story of the Wendigo, maybe the kid just approaches it because they don't know to be afraid of it. They don't recognize something as a monster, and that can be an interesting twist to a story. So there's a lot of power in telling a story through a child's eyes.
I would concur. I think also children and animals tend to be more privy to certain aspects of the spiritual world than maybe adults are. And I don't know if some people believe that, some people don't. I had some creepy interactions or encounters with my youngest daughter, so tend to think, I just try not to think about it, really, honestly. But I think that, yeah, telling scary stories through children's eyes for the innocence factor, but also through the fact that, historically speaking, and in lots of different tropey things, kids are more susceptible to those types of encounters in general, and to, like, getting themselves in situations like that, because maybe they can perceive things that adults can't, and you see the world differently, like Barbara said too.
All right, final question. So in the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books, Stephen Gammell is the illustrator, and his illustrations in the book and its sequels are infamous for haunting a generation of kids. How much do you think his visuals add to the experience of these stories? A lot. I mean, his art is very creepy, and it adds a very creepy element to an already creepy story. I think that part of that is because his art is minimalist in a sense, and so one thing that I think can make a story less scary is having a picture or something to look at, because then you're not picturing it in your head anymore, and that can make it a little less scary. But with his artwork, it's just enough to creep you out while still giving your brain the mileage to run with it and make it even scarier. And I think that it's very effective. And he's a very talented artist.
Yeah, I think the pictures made it worse for me as a kid because they're just so dark and like twisted and just, I don't know. If you look at like the illustration on the big toe, like the kid's like little fingers and just like, I don't know, just the whole, yeah. The illustrator did an excellent job of haunting a generation. I would agree with that sentiment.
So what I remember from these are the illustrations. Like, I don't remember the titles of most of these stories. I couldn't even tell you most of these stories except for like maybe one or two. But I will never forget the illustrations because that's I feel like I'm a visual person. So that, like, I remember like the creepiness, and honestly I feel like the illustrations make the stories even creepier, and even as an adult I still find the illustrations creepy. Like, they're creepy looking, like, illustrations, drawings and stuff. So I feel like you can say a lot more in an illustration. And I'm not gonna lie, if I was looking at the illustration as a kid, I think that would freak me out more than the stories. Like, what? Some of those I was like flipping through them. I was like, oh my god, this is, especially like there's one that it's like an older person, and it kind of looks like Gollum with like the stringy hair, from the scalp. It's like a tight scalp thing going on. I'm just like, oh my gosh, yeah, 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 for creepiness. Speaking of 10 out of 10, let's jump into the review section. So we're going to go through our scores for each of these stories. So for the first one is The Black Phone. Barbara, what did you rate The Black Phone?
An 8.
An 8. I gave it an 8.5. I really I enjoyed The Black Phone. I thought it was a well-written, creepy story, and it made me want to read some of the other short stories in that collection.
I also gave it an 8.
All right, moving on to The Big Toe. Barbara, what did you give that one?
7.5. 0.5 was removed because the family ate a effing toe, and that's just weird. So
how did I know it was going to come? I should have known. So I gave The Big Toe a 9, and I think it's not necessarily because it's like this well-crafted, perfect story, but there's just the memories that are associated with it, and it'll always hold a special place for me for that.
And I gave it a 7 for the same reason. Yeah, I think that the writing was, it was what it is. I think it's just the memories, and yeah.
Last but not least, The Wendigo. Barbara, what did you give that one?
Not my favorite. I gave it a 6.
I gave it an 8. My least favorite of the 3, but I still enjoy the story.
I gave it a 6 too. I think in hindsight, maybe I would enjoy it more if I was like privy to the lore like behind it, or the, I don't know, some of like what Michael like knows about the folklore, I guess. That might have made me enjoy it more. But out of all of the ones that I can recall from this collection, this wasn't one of my favorites.
That's fair. Well, we've reached near the end of another podcast. Make sure you're following Badass Literature for free in your favorite podcast app. Give us a rating and leave us a review if they allow you to. Also, please don't forget to be following us on social media and on Goodreads. Our handle is @BadassLitPod. And now we're going to have a short preview of our next episode. Next month, we will be reading They Bloom at Night by Trang Than Tran.
There have always been monsters all around us. Since the hurricane, the town of Mercy, Louisiana, has been overtaken by a strange red algae bloom. Noon and her mother have carved out a life in the wreckage, trawling for the mutated wildlife that lurks in the water and trading it to the corrupt harbor master. When she's focused on survival, Noon doesn't have to cope with what happened to her at the cove or the monster itching at her skin. Mercy has never been a safe place, but it's getting worse. People are disappearing, and the only clues as to why are whispers of underwater shadows and warnings to never answer the knocks at night. When the harbor master demands she capture the creature that's been drowning residents, Noon finds a reluctant ally in his daughter Covey, or Covey, I don't know. And as the next storm approaches, the two set off to find what's haunting Mercy. After all, Noon is no stranger to monsters.
I would say Covey. Is there another way to say that?
Covey.
Covey would be the
Covey?
only other word. Yeah.
Oh.
Covey is how I think that's probably pronounced.
Covey?
This takes place in Louisiana.
This one sounds good,
name.
and I'm going to miss it.
I've never heard of the name Covey.
I've never known anyone named Covey, but I've heard that name in media.
I mean, I've heard it as like someone's last name was like something they shortened it to something similar, I think, but I've never heard of Covey.
I mean, it could be a shortened name. I guess we'll see when we start reading the book. Barbara, will you bring us home?
Yes, I'll bring us home, Michael. Have feedback about today's episode? You can contact us by writing to badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. You can also send us a DM or leave a comment on any of our social media handles. Man, today is hard to talk. Oof.
As always, thank you so much for listening, and we hope you're having a fantastic spooky season. And thank you for joining us for our spooky special episode. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
I'm Lauren.
My toe! Give me back my toe!
Where is my toe?
Children, this is a story. Do not be stealing people's toe.
It's right here.
No.